Hi, I am Dr. Kim Sage. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. Welcome to my YouTube channel and to this series called Wildly Loved, where we are diving into understanding how our trauma brain and our childhood shows up in our adult lives and how our bodies and minds sometimes don't know that we are no longer in childhood in terms of how we respond and how we see the world and how we feel. So today's topic is part of another little mini series about really lessons in wild love, things that I think we just have to work on, understand, and know if we want to work on healing and enhancing our lives and relationships. But before I get into that, if you're new here, please consider subscribing and checking that little box. And that way you'll get notified when I post new videos. And also please check out my links and resources down below on my online courses, which all include workbooks and journaling and meditations and affirmations. And just, I truly, truly believe in the work I've put out in these courses. And so it comes from a place of my own personal experience and years of clinical experience, especially in working with people who had complicated childhoods, who were often in need of understanding what happened to them and why their parents are the way they are and how that affects their lives and relationships, and often also need some type of inner parenting and or reparenting, I should say, and remothering. So please check those out. So today's video is about how we often believe that when we have certain childhoods, that love and to be lovable requires some very specific and rigid rules about how we must show up in the world. And so we're going to talk about how to sort of challenge those and explore those. For example, if we go back into attachment theory and the 4 styles of attachment: secure, insecure anxious, insecure avoidant, and disorganized, or also called fearful avoidant at times, or fearful. What we're talking about is that the quality and the reciprocity and sort of how the caregiving relationship went between the time we're born and our primary caregiver really sets the stage alongside their nervous system and ours, meaning how we respond in our bodies to each other. It sets the stage for a lifetime, like a map, a template of what we believe that relationships and love and who we are, what that looks like. And so if we think about, we're going to skip past secure attachment for a minute. Remember that secure attachment is at the core about having caregivers that generally, let's call it maybe 70% of the time, they kind of got it right. They kind of knew when to lean in and when to lean out. When they had, issues or needed to make repairs, they mostly did. The caregiver was mostly secure and stable, and the child then could count on some certain things happening in terms of reciprocity and responsiveness, and the child could go out in the world and more freely explore, because the great irony is the more we're securely attached, the more we're able to go out and explore the world and take risks and not to necessarily like travel the world. It could be that, but we know we can always get back home, and so we're willing to take some risks. Now that also depends on your temperament and things like that, but generally speaking. So let's talk about the rules though when we have these other attachment styles. So when we have a more anxious attachment style, we have a caregiver who is often unresponsive at times, not always, but often, or inconsistently responsive, and unpredictable, who often over-involved us in their state of mind, their moods, their feelings, their worries, their adult issues, a lot of spilling over, not necessarily always intentionally, but of their adult emotions and feelings. And so the child develops an outside-in orientation, meaning I have to first start with what is everyone else doing before I can look at myself. I start with the outside. I don't start with, well, what do I feel and what do I think? I'm reading the room, as I say, at all times. And so I learned that love in this dynamic is about making sure everyone else is okay first. I learned that I'm good at that. I learned that I'm expected to do that. I learned to hold and tolerate and have not really tolerate, but actually just live with, I should say, a lot of anxiety in my body about relationships because I just never really know what to expect. And I learned I'm often a good caretaker. And so I know how to give you what you want. And I just reverse those roles. And often to my own detriment, I'm so focused on making sure you're okay and taking the temperature of you, because these parents often set the stage for the temperature in the room, the mood, the vibe, basically, as everyone says now, that our go-to is to do that. And so love looks like caretaking. It looks like mind and mood reading. It looks like me not necessarily feeling like I can count on people. Sometimes I can, and so then not trusting it, and then kind of obsessing and internalizing that my love isn't secure because I just don't know when it's going to flip. And at the core, love is anxiety provoking. Just don't know what to expect. In a more avoidant dynamic or attachment pattern, we learn that my emotions, especially my negative feelings, my crying, my anger, my sadness, those might be too much for other people. And so I learned that love is I hold on to those feelings. I take care of them. I isolate. I don't even necessarily think about going to someone else to trust myself. I say to a lot of patients with this attachment style, where are you? You're not bringing yourself into the relationship, right? Where is Kim in this relationship? And so I learned that I must also protect my independence at all costs. I feel and believe that people who are too needy and might consume me aren't safe and are uncomfortable. And so love can't look like needs, because if you're needy at all, which is appropriate in a relationship, we're going to have some needs. That's going to freak me out, make me want to go, right? That feels like too much. You're too much. And the core is that I actually feel like I'm too much. And I learned very early as a child to hold it inside and contain all of those feelings, but not show the world, as I talk about. These are the babies who, in the research of the strange situation, mommy left the room and they didn't even seem to be that upset about it. But when we looked at their their heart rate, and their blood pressure, these babies were just as upset as the babies who were on the outside visibly upset. So I've learned that to be loved, I don't bring my full self. I don't trust. Also, I can't rely on you. And I am safest in love, really, especially when I'm triggered, on my own. And I will really fight you for that autonomy. And yet many, many people with this style long for a relationship. They long to be seen, right? They long to be those babies who could safely cry and be heard and be held. So love is really conditional. And it's about what I say and what I do, and how my value reflects on others also, because this style often had parents who rewarded achievement and performance and being good, right? But not so much the messy stuff. They just weren't really good at that. And so love is, like I'm saying, it's very conditional, it's very isolating, and love is too much, especially if you're showing up in a needy way and I'm too much. And lastly, in the disorganized style, we have this combination of everything I just talked about in both anxious and avoidant. And we also learn that love is super unpredictable. It is a very much eggshell situation. I often call really is eggshell parenting at its core. Parents often might be, kind and loving and then raging and out of control. They might always be dangerous. They might be dissociated. There's a big spectrum here. I might learn that love is at its core dangerous, unpredictable, not safe, isolating, terrifying, right? I just don't, it kind of depends on how you kind of lean into the both anxious and avoidant and fearful parts of this one in the disorganized pattern. But the core is that love is kind of chaos. It's not safe really at all. And so therefore I don't even know how to bring myself into relationships. I might show up as chaotic as well, because that is what I learned, that love is chaos. Or I might repetitively choose chaotic partners, right? If I have a more borderline presentation or struggle, or my parent did, I might choose someone who was emotionally shut down because that seemed safer. They were never going to push me to go into that scary part, right? Or I might choose a narcissistic kind of person because they seem really stable and consistent. I've seen people choose avoidant, like truly avoidant personality type partners who have those traits, I should say, more so than the diagnosis, because that felt safe, because there was so much chaos in childhood. But then that doesn't feel good, because then they don't feel seen or loved or able to even be emotional in relationships. And they often say, you know, you don't talk to me, you don't see me, you don't hear me, and I feel lonely in this relationship. And as I said, they also, as the partner might act out, you might act out, because that's what you learn. To get your love seen and demanded, you have to sort of create chaos. So if any of these are true for you, the goal is to understand that though these were your rules that you learned, these are the patterns you had to adapt to, that we don't have to continue to carry these in our everyday lives. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're just going to work on your attachment wounds and one day not have these issues. I truly believe that it is a matter of degree, a matter of developing tools and knowledge, that it is a matter of healing the attachment in many regards. And so you do, learn how to lean into healthier behaviors and partners and patterns. But that initial go-to, that trigger might sometimes be to pull back or to become obsessive about a text message, right? So it's learning how to heal yourself, but also learning the tools to manage when you often, at times, might go back into those patterns. You just, like I always say, you don't want to live in them without any real awareness. You know that you do this, you're working on it, and you have the skills to make repairs, you have the skills to accept apologies, but you also have the skills to set boundaries and hold them, right? So you learn how to manage that. So the first thing you want to do if you want to work on this is really assess your style, is take an inventory, is where do you think you learned love had rules, and what were those rules as they applied to you, and what are they in terms of what you expect from a partner, from a lover, even from your children or others. You'd be surprised. Kids often feel so much safer, but as I say, they often, when they get older, especially as they become teenagers and they start to separate and push back, or even earlier, that can feel really threatening and triggering if you're not doing your own work. And you don't want to project that on your kids. I mean, you're going to sometimes, but you want to learn how to, be more mindful and more conscious of how you're engaging with them. And then to say, I'm sorry, that wasn't okay when you mess up, because you're going to mess up. That's just life. So you might journal about what you believe these rules are and what you've done in the past and what you'd like to do. And maybe ask yourself, how does it feel to be stuck in these rigid love rule patterns? Where do I feel constrained? Where am I not able to just relax and sort of wildly lean in? There, I found a way connected to love, right? To myself, to others. And so where can I start to work on these patterns? Do I need to focus on self-advocacy, on emotion regulation, on listening to podcasts, reading books, going to therapy, working on my self-compassion, definitely working on my self-care needs. And I don't just mean like a bubble bath or lighting a candle, but I mean everything from what you eat, how you exercise, what you do. And I talk about this a lot in my Remothered protocol and in my other course on healing and dealing with the trauma of borderline or narcissistic parents, is that you have to change the patterns inside. You have to actively parent yourself and deal with those relationships, especially if you're still in them, oftentimes with these kind of parents. And then you want to try to identify when you are falling off the wagon, so to speak, into these rigid patterns again. So is your anxiety getting a hold of you? You're obsessing, like I said, about how many emojis were in the text message, or you're isolating and your partner keeps saying to you, babe, what's wrong? What's going on? And you're saying nothing. I'm fine. It's fine. But, you're not fine. What's that? My favorite Edie Brickell song is There's Nothing I Hate More Than Nothing. It's such a great song. If you're a younger person, you might check it out. I sound like such an old person, but you know what I mean. There's just nothing I hate more than nothing. Nothing keeps me up at night, right? So you want to work on bringing yourself into relationships and sharing, and really look at maybe the possibility that you aren't even bringing your full self into any relationship because you're so constrained and guarded and protected and living under this, really kind of back to the trauma brain rules. You're living in this attachment pattern and you can't help that that's what happened to you. But you do have the power to work on it today. But it's just, also with little steps, right? We're not just going to wake up and be healed and whole. It is a journey and a process, but it truly can be life-changing when you start to realize and own what belongs to you, what doesn't belong to you, and what you want to do about it. So I hope this video was helpful. Once again, thank you so much for being here and watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Take good care and stay safe. Bye, guys.